The head of direct-to-consumer technology recruitment at Warner Media. I am so honored to be here today with these two gentlemen. I am thrilled to be here with Jeremiah and Chuck. I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you, but just real quick to give you a little bit more about me. I've been in TA for almost 15 years now. I have a passion for this, especially our communities, and continuing to create access and multiple access points throughout the industry, not just at one place. And so I know that Jeremiah and Chuck are very passionate about that as well. And so now I'm going to kick it off to Jeremiah to go ahead and introduce himself.
Thank you, Roz, and I'm happy to be here. I'm Jeremiah Allen, Senior Talent Associate at Axios, where we get you smarter, faster on news and information that matters. I've been in the HR and talent space for the last 7 years, getting my start hiring temps from staffing agencies and moving on to hiring interns for a couple of years at a DC nonprofit. I joined Axios in 2018. Actually, my 2-year anniversary will be next week, which feels kind of like 5 years in startup years. And I support hiring for our tech, product, and design teams. I also support universities and organizations in coordinating career fairs to spread the Axios gospel to anyone who is eager to hear about what we're doing and increasing our visibility while doing so. I'm honored to be here on this panel.
So awesome to have you. And Chuck, tell us a little bit about yourself.
How's it going? I've also been in recruiting for about 7 years as well. I started off focusing on healthcare technology, recruiting for that and building out a top 100 internship program as Associate Director of Talent. And now I'm at Reonomy as a talent partner focused on our technical recruiting, hiring all across the board from engineers, designers, and product managers. So it is an honor to be here to give you guys advice on what is needed to help break through the space.
Awesome. Well, again, it's an honor to be here. I'm sure throughout this conversation, we'll find more moments to connect on. I think our passions align pretty nicely for us to be partnering in this conversation. Now, it's a crazy time. We've been in a global pandemic. I would say racial tensions in my lifetime are at an all-time high. We've got technology booming and transforming every day, and it's a lot happening. What are some things through all of this that job seekers can do to really stand out in the candidate process right now? Jeremiah?
I like to start with resumes because that's where a lot of candidates that's what they think about usually when they ask me this question. I just want to start with saying that less is more. I can't tell you how many times I've opened a resume and say, oof, that's a lot of words. And it's a strain on us. It's not easy on the eyes to see a bunch of words on the screen just taking up all the white space. So utilize your bullet points, use white space, just make it easy for us to want to even read it. If you need some tips, look at Axios News, look at how we utilize our bullet points in white space. Another thing I would say is, and I'm not going to go into a big tutorial on resumes. You can find tools everywhere, but another thing I would say is no resume should be created equal. So every resume it should be a living document. So whenever you apply for a job, that resume should be tailor-made for that specific job. You don't have to put your life story on it or anything like that. And moving away a little bit from resumes, let's go to LinkedIn profiles. I can't tell you how many times I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, as I'm sure you do. And a lot of candidates, they just put where they work and like how many years they've been there, and that's it. Your LinkedIn profile should have all your skills. It should be a reflection of your resume. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at a profile and wish I saw more, but had to move on because I didn't have anything else to go on. So beef up your LinkedIn profiles and just make it easy for us to see what you're capable of. Beyond that, I would say follow organizations that you're passionate about. Stay abreast to what they're doing, so that if you do get an interview, you can speak intelligently about what they're doing, and it shows us that you did more than just a 10-minute Google search. And if you do get an interview, do your homework on the company, read the mission, ask really important questions, ask really thought-provoking questions. And if you hadn't heard of the company before applying, because you will get a question like, hey, have you heard of us before applying? It's okay to say, no, I haven't heard of you, but your follow-up should be, this is why I'm interested in the company. This is what I think I can add to your mission. So it's okay to not have heard of the company. You won't get dinged for it, but always do your homework and have a good answer for, whether, when they do ask you that question. And one last thing I just want to touch on real quick is employee resource groups. So it's okay to ask if you can speak to someone on an employee resource group. If you don't know what an employee resource group is, it's basically a safe space for employees to gather in groups that they identify with. I'm on a Axios of Color employee resource group at Axios. We have a Quaxios group for our LGBTQ group, and a Women Who Kicks Axios group. And at Axios, we invite candidates to speak to members of our ERG so they can see what it's like to work at Axios. And if a company says, they deny you that opportunity, I would say it's a red flag. I would say don't continue to pursue that, but it's a huge red flag. But it does show that you care about D&I. And at the end of an interview, what do you call those people? Recruiters like us. They actually long day. I just dropped my kids off with my wife, and long day. But we'll ask, do you have any questions? Have good questions. Have thoughtful questions. If at the end of an interview and I ask you, do you have any questions for me? And you say no, I'm gonna be like, not a good look. So those are a couple of things that I would throw out there.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. Took a lot of the words out of my mouth, and you said it amazing, Jeremiah. So a couple things to add to that. Within LinkedIn, keeping that refreshed, I 100% agree. Keeping your profile picture nice, updating your stats and your About You section, all things that I like to see, especially when I'm doing outbounding and trying to find new candidates, is trying to find the common ground that I may have with somebody else, whether it's tech stack or just a love of football and sports or whatever it may be. Being able to talk to who you are a little bit more. Your LinkedIn profile is a lot of times the first point of contact that I have with a candidate. Another thing is just the research in the industry that you're choosing. If you're early in your career, highly recommend identifying an industry that really suits you. Tech as a whole is amazing, but it could be entertainment, a CPG company, marketing, whatever it is. Honing in on that and then realizing that you have to adapt your questions, adapt your responses to that industry. I love tech, so I'm going to keep it in that space. And a saying I love is agile work requires agile thinking. And so being agile in your responses and how you're able to adapt your experiences to what works for that company, whether it's learning a new fundamental skill or your willingness to improve an existing skill, that's really important for me to see as a recruiter and for us to see from a talent and hiring perspective, is an ability to adapt, especially in a startup environment or even a more established organization. Any company and any hiring manager and recruiter is going to want to see that ability. So a couple other pieces to add, but Jeremiah did an amazing job giving a lot more information.
Yeah, thank you both. I want to add a little bit of a different perspective on resumes, because when we talk about standing out as a candidate, especially if you're in a highly competitive or saturated concentration, or if you're in maybe a new market, or you're just now going to look for work, I think something to think about. Yes, your resume needs to be a live document, as Jeremiah pointed out. One thing we're going to disagree on with the less is more. And here's why I say that. If you've got 15 years of experience, right, it's going to be very difficult probably for you to put that on one page. And I got that question a lot too. It's probably going to be difficult to put it on two. But the one thing you can do is prioritize relevancy by making sure the things that are in those job descriptions that the company is seeking are easily spottable in your resume. So that bullet point that Jeremiah hit on, I +1 to that 100%.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And I wasn't suggesting that just put it all on one page, because depending on your level of experience or whatever level you're going to be coming in at. Yeah, I totally agree. I 100% agree with all that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm okay with more words, less words. I think the more words you have, the greater the risk for grammatical errors, which do hurt you. They really do hurt you. And I don't think we talked about that piece enough. But those are some things that I thought about. And in terms of LinkedIn, I actually need to do a better job of that myself, because while my title is there, Jeremiah, you wouldn't call me because I don't have enough information about what I do there. But I will say it's a little bit of a 50-50 chance there, because that actually would intrigue some sources to need to find out more and talk to you more about it. I think the one thing from an interview standpoint that, and this kind of will segue into the question I want to ask you all next, but in an interview how do you stand out as a candidate face-to-face? And I think we've gotten some good points from Jeremiah and Chuck on relevancy, research, and then why am I in this process? But The other aspect of that is being able to find you and demonstrate who you are in that interview process, aside from the technical skills. Because what a lot of employees are looking for now, especially in this rejuvenated world of authentication, right? We want to be our authentic selves. They're trying to figure out who is Chuck, who is Jeremiah. And so being able to present that, you don't have to tell me your life story, please don't, but being able to share enough information to where someone can walk away from an interview and say, not only do I know that Chuck is capable, but I feel like I got to know him a little bit in this interview. And that's something I've seen. So I want to position it now to you two. What have you seen as some of the opportunities or mistakes that candidates often make, especially in the interview phase, that we could give them some tips on? I'll start with Chuck this time.
Yeah, well, pre-interview, I'll definitely say, agree with Jeremiah, not doing enough research, but another thing is blasting out resumes and not knowing the company that you're even interviewing for. Happens a ton of times because you didn't focus on one interview, you didn't focus on one industry, you didn't focus on one company. And a lot of times I have people that say, what company is this for again? So before the interview, before the phone call, again, continuously doing your research is only going to help you out through the entire process and help you stand out. But when you're on site, I think it's okay to be an introverted or an extroverted person. A lot of times people feel like I may not get an opportunity or the same opportunity because I'm not as loud as Chuck or as passionate as Chuck externally. But you can show passion in multiple different ways, and you can show personality in a lot of different ways as well. So when it comes to answering questions, being honest and truthful with who you are and how you handle certain situations, a lot of times when we're interviewing, as you mentioned, Roz, we get a lot of the interview self and not the who are you every single day at work. So from a recruitment standpoint, a lot of us in the industry will try to make your process as comfortable as possible, but it's on you when you're interviewing to showcase who you really are, because no one wants a fake person. No one wants a candidate that the way that you think we want you to be a certain way. We want you every single day. We want to know how you're going to handle situations and how you're going to communicate effectively. And so there's a lot of different tricks that you can do when it comes to how you're going to present yourself, the research prior, answering questions to a family member or whoever it may be to get yourself uncomfortable, because an interview is uncomfortable. And so being able to try and get that process done ahead of time will allow you to feel a little bit more comfortable in your responses when you're interviewing directly with somebody. But I actually have one of my favorite interviews was a candidate that sent me their Myers-Briggs breakdown prior to interviewing, saying, this is my personality type and I own it. And I may not show XYZ in a certain way, but I still care. And I loved having that experience as well. So, and he's starting on Monday. So there's a lot of different ways to showcase who you are, but being upfront right in the beginning is what I'd recommend the most.
I think, and you stated that beautifully there, Chuck. I think what I would add is preparation. I think a lot of times a lot of candidates can be very, very long-winded. In an interview, there are going to be questions asked of you, and if you're smart, you're going to have questions too. You need to allow time for that. And I think that when a lot of candidates come to interviews and they get long-winded, I think it's because they're not prepared. So what I would say is, jot down your story, type it up, whatever. Frame your story in a way that takes the listener on a journey. That, I think, is something that would stifle the temptation to ramble, because when you ramble, it's just when you're just trying to find things to say. But if you already know what you're going to say, then you say it, and then that's it. So jot down your story, edit, rehearse it, and then come prepared to tell your story. Make sure it's framed in a way that is easy for the listener to hear and take them on a journey.
That's great. And I think the only thing I would add, I think you guys nailed it. You guys are giving out pro tips for free. The only thing that I would add to that is in the virtual landscape, right now that we're all in these distributed models, I think one thing that we miss is that we have to let that same preparedness show in a virtual interviewing environment. And so because you can't always index on body language virtually, look at the surroundings. It looks like Chuck's got a drawing on his wall. I might want to talk about that in the interview so that we can open up a conversation and become more personal in that conversation. rehearse your journey, know your story. I mean, that was such valuable information here, and be ready to make it relevant, right? You know, we can talk about our stories and how we ended up at each of our employers today, and make sure we tie the connection. There's something that connected us to this place. So great. I see a lot of stuff popping off in this chat about people that are looking for work. And so I hope that this is really going to enable you all and empower you to take control in this process. So when we talk about empowerment and we talk about control, when we get into these jobs and we start to roll, and this little thing creeps up on us that we all know as imposter syndrome. And so what can you offer candidates or people who may not necessarily be looking to change roles right now? Maybe it's getting ready for a promotion or going into performance review. But how do we put that little negative thing in our mind in check? And how do we overcome imposter syndrome?
Yeah, if I can go first, I started doing this exercise recently. First off, to all those who are watching, everybody goes through it, even the three of us on the screen. I go through it every day, and some days are harder than others. And I just started this one exercise where and this may not work for everyone else, you got to find what works for you. But I would look in the mirror, literally look in the mirror, look myself in the eye on a particularly hard day, and I would affirm positive and true things about myself, because you got to feed that positive voice. The negative voice it's automatic, but the positive voice, you have to be intentional about exercising it and using it and feeding it. I would look in the mirror and I would say, you are capable, you are competent, you are confident, you are handsome, and you have great hair, your teeth are nice. It's kind of cool to just throw a little vanity in there too. But say all those things about yourself, right? And then the more you do it, the more you start to believe it, the more you start to walk in it, and the more you own it. And then that day when imposter syndrome comes to kick your ass, you can tell imposter syndrome to do something else to your ass.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think it does start from within, and we all have faced it, as you mentioned. Myself, trying to always find technical talent, I always feel like I knew the right words to say, but didn't truly understand what people were going through. And I felt a little fake when talking to engineers or talking to peers. So I challenged myself, and I recommend everyone to do the same. I took a computer science course that way I could talk about my projects that I've worked on with other engineers. And that works for me, but obviously different fields, you do different things. I highly recommend challenging yourself, taking a free online tutorial, talking to other professionals in your industry like we're doing right now, and giving me the affirmation that I'm doing something right, that I have the same experiences, and that I am right. I am good enough for this job. One thing you don't want to do, though, when you're getting into a new job is to fake it to try to get the job, right? And so that's where, imposter syndrome really shows up in those first couple of weeks when you're at a new job and like, do I really deserve it? And that's where I really recommend that you double down on the affirmations. You double down on, I am worth it, I am here because my experiences got me here, not just because I talked my way into an opportunity. But for me, it's always about challenging myself and challenging others. So highly recommend taking courses, certifications, whatever it is, to make you really believe that this is what you're meant to do and you're really good at it.
I love all of this. This is so helpful. I mean, I see the positive affirmations going off. And some of us, I see someone else said this too, we use affirmations just to get through the workday. So especially as imposter syndrome kicks in. I attended a conference back in 2015, and I saw a talk by a woman named Tiffany Dockery. If you all don't know who that is, she's an amazing product manager who I'm constantly trying to recruit. I think she's happy over at Instagram, but feel free to go out there and try. And she gave a talk on imposter syndrome, and she basically said, at the time, because it's 2015, so put it in perspective there. If the best rapper alive can be a biracial Canadian, you can accomplish anything. and what's crazy is then she gave us, she said, when you feel imposter syndrome kicking in, I want you all to say this prayer to yourself. And it was, Lord, give me the confidence of a mediocre white man. And I literally screamed. Because I said, you know what? Those are the most confident people on the planet. I've got some friends that'll tell you they're so confident. And so imposter syndrome is something that, Jeremiah said, every single one of us go through it. You will go through it at some point, especially when you are the only in a room, one of two in a room. These types of environments heighten I would say that they just widen the door for imposter syndrome to creep in. So I hope that some of the things that we've shared today will be exceptionally beneficial to you. So keep working on it, and make sure, another thing I thought about, find someone in the organization who you can hold to an accountability partner who knows that you're good at your job. They know that you deserve to be here. And when you start to feel like you don't, make eye contact with that person. And that was some advice I got from Stacey Olive, who's the head of TA at the New York Times. But leverage those people to help you when things like imposter syndrome show up. So we talked about imposter syndrome. We talked about standing out. Now let's move it to recruiting a little bit. And there's been a few questions that have come in that I kind of want to slide into before I asked this one, and one that was really good. And it was around diversity in the pipeline. And what are some best practices and things that we can do to ensure diversity is in our pipeline, even when we're not at the most diverse companies?
Yeah, I think one thing that we've been taking a big stab on is partnering with the right people. Partnerships are huge, and identifying the right organizations that have not just diverse talent, but strong diverse talent that can add value to your organization. So partnering with people like Blackest Tech and other companies out there, and then not just throwing the jobs out there and hoping people apply, but taking it a step further and proactively looking through your ATS and proactively seeing the people that have applied, utilizing certain tags, and then making a conscious effort that, the experiences, if they do align, let's push them forward and let's have these conversations. Another thing from a hiring practice is just eliminating bias. A lot of that's unconscious bias is a killer when it comes to hiring. Oh, you went to the same school as me. Oh, you say the same positive affirmation as me. Let's give you the job, or let's not give you the job. And that's something that we have to take out of our day-to-day, is eliminating that unconscious bias. So we go through trainings with all of our professionals, all of our talent team and our hiring managers to eliminate that bias, to ensure that everyone is getting that fair and equal opportunity to get the job.
That's a great point about unconscious bias, Chuck. And I would challenge recruiters, because we think about training the hiring managers on their bias, and it's just second nature to us. But we usually don't stop and think about our own. And I would challenge recruiters to do monthly checks, do quarterly checks, poke holes in your process and see what stinks, and see what you can do to make your own processes better. And I guess on a more on the ground level, I think about sourcing. I think about sourcing on LinkedIn and trying to be a little bit more intentional about how I source. Someone used a reference. They referenced a racetrack in terms of talking about equity. And I like to use the same illustration when I think about sourcing. If you think of a racetrack, I think it's about 400 meters around. And if you think how the athletes are lined up, they're not lined up shoulder to shoulder for a reason, because the person in lane one has way less ground to cover than everyone else to the right of them. And the person at the very end has a whole lot more ground to cover to get to the finish line or the goal. So the starting points are appropriately modified so that everyone can cover the same amount of ground to get the same amount of to get to the same opportunity. So I think of that, and I think about lane one, and in simple terms, very, very simple terms. Lane one, if I'm hiring or recruiting for a director level, infrastructure engineer, which I have recruited for before, and lane one, that lane is going to skew heavily white male. Lane two is probably going to be heavily white female. And for simplicity's sake, everyone to the right is everybody gets darker as you go all the way out to the loop of the racetrack. And in each lane, let's say lane one is 1 million white guys, but in lane 8, there's 100,000 women of color, right? And if I have a sourcing goal of 20 people that I want to give to the hiring manager, where am I going to start? I'm not going to start in lane 1 because we're going to have 20 white guys. So I'm going to start all the way out the end. I'm going to work my way in. And when I get to lane 3, I'm probably going to have 15 people. But guess what? I still got lane 2 and 1 to get 5 more people. And that way I cover and touch everybody in my pipeline and my LinkedIn project. It's colorful and beautiful. And if I had a microphone, I would drop it.
Mic drop. I love it. So I had the privilege back, I think in February, to sit down with a principal recruiter, and we talked about this. And it's one of the episodes on my podcast called Backdoor Diversity. And it's with Ariel Julie, who happens to also be a recruiter here at Warner Media now. She wasn't at the time, but she is now. And one of the things I think that she hints on is how we approach this topic with hiring managers can make or break whether or not that diversity, that slate, reaches that finalist round. And one of the things that I've noticed is that when you talk about diversity with hiring managers, it becomes checkmark based almost. They get very much like, okay, I need to do this. Let me check off these boxes. But for recruiters, and for all the recruiters that are here today, sourcers as well, you have a unique position to where if you don't have to talk about it, you can actually just ensure that your pipelines are diverse. If I know that we're going to get white applicants, Asian applicants, but we're not going to get applicants that are Black and Latinx because they don't tend to apply to our jobs because we haven't marketed ourselves to that community, from an outreach standpoint, that's where I will invest my time. How do I invest my time there? You know, one time I got so fed up, I put all these keywords that we were looking for, and then I just added all the Divine Nine. So every Black fraternity and sorority possible, I add that to the search string also. So if you had listed that you were a member of Alpha Phi Alpha on LinkedIn and you were also a software engineer, you came up in my search, or Omega Psi Phi. You know, the same can be done with Latinx. Add certain organizations to your search strings or your filters, and that will help with some of that self-identifying data that we just can't guesswork we can't do on LinkedIn. Okay, I see now we're going to start a roll call in the chat group. I'd have made the mistake. But those are some of the things that you can do as a recruiter to ensure that diversity is happening. Now, we've gotten a couple of questions, and I'm trying to keep us on time here. So I'm just going to throw in, we really have time for one more question. So of these questions, I want to talk about one that is probably pretty popular right now, and that's career changing. And so there's been coding boot camps. There's LinkedIn or lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning, where people are learning how to code themselves on YouTube. What tips do we have for people that are changing career fields? They've got no experience. They may have had 5 or 6 years in finance, and now I've finished this boot camp. I can code. I can demonstrate it. What advice do we have for those folks with how they can position themselves to be desirable talent during this time?
That's a phenomenal question. First things first, I think, is expectations. If you are switching a career, but as you mentioned, you have 5+ years in a certain other field, and one thing is compensation expectations is really align yourself, because you would be coming in an entry level experience, so to say, for a new career. But more importantly, I really think is marketing yourself and your new career the way you did your old one. If you're in a tech career and you did your boot camp, utilizing your GitHub page. I know there's a lot of designers here developing a really strong portfolio, things like that showcase that you are really strong with your current career as well as you were with your past career, and also owning your past experiences and making that a selling point for you. Not that, I was a finance manager, now I'm an engineer, but I was a finance manager, so now I could take all my kind of statistical side of my brain, adapting that to the mathematical side and the creative side of designing and engineering. And now I'm a stronger overall package. And that's how I would market it if you are changing your career.
Yeah.
I honestly couldn't have said it better myself. The only thing I would add to that is, find influential people in the field that you're going to be looking into joining. If you're like myself, I follow people in my industry all the time to get smarter, get more educated on things, see what they're doing, see what they're talking about. So follow people, and if you can, I know it's kind of, we're in this virtual world now, but it should be easier to connect with someone and do a virtual coffee just to have a conversation and have these people in your orbit. And then, you can learn from them. You might even find a mentor that way. Chuck laid it out great. I would just add that one thing. It's just to follow someone influential in the field that you're going after.
I agree. And try to find a sponsor. Mentors are going to be great for you too, because they're going to be able to help you, but try to find someone that is in a decision-making role or that has influence to say, no, I'm telling you, Chuck's the person. Go ahead and hire Chuck. My wife has a biology background, has worked in veterinary medicine, and now she's coming towards the end of a coding boot camp. Shout out to Code Fellows. They're a great organization. Best believe I'm going to be helping her position herself to work in an industry that is close to her passion of science and medicine, but also now allows her to work as a developer. So I really hope that some of the things that Jeremiah, Chuck, and I have left with you all today resonate, that it becomes beneficial. Feel free to connect with all of us on LinkedIn, and just know that you're not in this by yourself. The things that you are feeling, our community is feeling, but it is a great time to be Black and in this space. I did see a question about not putting your race on an application. To each his own. I say, do what makes you comfortable. I am actually leading with all of those things right now, because I want to make sure that wherever I go, that my Blackness, my gayness, my womanness are not just accepted, but celebrated. So my philosophy is to lead with those things, but to each your own, whatever you're comfortable with. So we're at time, and I would love to chat more, but thank you all so much for attending. Jeremiah, Chuck, thank you for your time on this Friday, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, Ross.
Thanks,
Good
Ross.
chat with you, Chuck.
Bye, everyone.